Welcome everyone to the Education for Innovation Digital Town Hall at the Museum in downtown Washington, D.C. This event is a partnership of the Aspen Institute, Intel, ITIF, the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, and the PBS NewsHour. I'm Hari Srinivasan, correspondent for the PBS NewsHour. Today, we're going to take a look at how to educate the next generation of innovators to keep the U.S. globally competitive. Okay, we've got a question from Olin College, Anita Mass there. You can watch them on the screen. Go ahead.
So hi, I'm a senior here at Olin College. My name is Ali Haas. And we mentioned the sort of unrivaled environment for innovation that the U.S. still enjoys. We also mentioned sort of the confidence that U.S. students have in their skills, in their educational skills. And I was wondering this is a question to Secretary Duncan. I was wondering what you think our education system is currently doing right to foster that kind of environment and how we can continue to do so in the future.
So we're doing much this right, just not enough. So you hit on it. Our ability to produce students who are innovative, who are creative is unmatched. Folks travel from around the world to visit our schools to figure out how we're doing that. Our higher education system, I think, is absolutely the best in the world. No one compares yet. And so there's much that's positive. It's so interesting to me, this imbalance, this dissonance between confidence and reality. And I think while I'm all for confidence, I think as a country we need a little bit of humbleness now. And this is a time to really be humble, to learn a lot from what other folks are doing, and maybe close the achievement confidence gap. And there's so much that we can learn. Again, this report, and I urge people, this report, they talked about sort of every level of education, how we need to think differently and challenging a lot of our basic assumptions from early childhood education all the way up to teacher preparation programs. We need to take a very, very thoughtful and humble look at that and figure out how we do a better job of preparing many more young people. And so this is a wake-up call. This is a call to arms, and we need to work together. Principal leadership is hugely important. We've been part of the problem there, and we're trying very hard to change our behavior.
I wonder if we have a question from the Olin College of Engineering out in Needham, Massachusetts. There you are. Hi. Anybody from Olin have a question for the Secretary? Take a pick. Any of you.
Something that we were talking about earlier was that there's a big push to raise the bar in education, but we don't necessarily know where creativity fits into that, because at Olin, at least, we see creativity as one of our biggest assets, and we were wondering how you were planning on ensuring that creativity was included in the K-12 education system, and how raising the bar wouldn't just eliminate variability and autonomy in individual student learning.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it can't just be K-12. It's got to be what do you do in preschool, what are you doing at higher ed. But I think this idea of creativity, innovation, entrepreneurs, that's the future. That's where the job market's going. We need folks that just don't know science and technology. We need folks who are going to create the jobs and create the businesses that don't exist today. And so this idea, the biggest complaint I've heard as I've traveled the country is this idea of a narrowing of the curriculum that we've seen under No Child Left Behind. So reading and math get tested, they get taught, but science, social studies, foreign language, dance, drama, art, music, creativity, think about dance, think about drama, think about the tie to math. And unfortunately, in many places, those have been eliminated. And so again, we're trying to come back. I think the way you infuse creativity is you teach in different ways, you think about entrepreneurship, but you give children a well-rounded, world-class education. And let me be clear, that's not just at the high school level, that's got to be for our first and second and third graders, so they start to get a sense of the world around them and what their skills and what their interests are. And so where we have narrowed the curriculum around the country, I think we have lost a lot of that creativity. We've lost a lot of the innovation, and we're fighting very hard and asking for $1 billion to try and go back in a very different direction.
All right, joining us from Olin College now are Lynn Andrea Stein, Professor of Computer and Cognitive Science and Director of Olin's Initiative for Innovation in Engineering Education, Elizabeth Threlkel, the sophomore from Evergreen, Colorado, seniors Oliver Haas from Klosterneuburg, Austria, and Marco Morales of San Ysidro, California, and Shara Kearns, Distinguished Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering and Founding Vice President for Innovation and Research. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's, we've had conversations kind of including you or referencing you in the past. I mean, considering Rob's report and considering the PISA numbers, what's the first thing that leaps out at your mind?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind, and it's something that's been coming up, my name is Marco again, is this sort of theme of community, which at Olin we define as student engagement. And it's something that I think has stood out to me in terms of as they mentioned before, the Olin's results with the engagement survey. It actually is something that we take for granted a little bit, but it has a lot to do with that community aspect, that you can actually be a part of this community of learners where learning happens all the time, which I think is a problem in the sense that in K through 12 you generally have this phenomenon where learning is an on-off switch, and students are learning when they're in the classroom, and outside the classroom, you know, they're done. They can finally go do video games or something else, but really that perspective that learning can happen all over the place, in between classes, you know, at other lectures that may not be in your discipline, is I think a really powerful thing. So anyways, that's one thing that stands out to me.
So really, I mean, even Secretary Duncan was talking about really the length of time spent throughout the year when in the K through 12 level of not forgetting and so forth. But these guys are saying obviously that it's not just inside the classroom, that you have to create this community. Do you find that in some of the schools that you've been talking to?
Again, you go and you look at the high school, the science high schools, or places like Olin. I think part of the magic that makes that work, besides the great teachers and the faculty and all of that and the students, is that everybody in this environment is all in the same focus. They're all doing something similar, and so they are able to get sort of more. The sum of the parts the whole is more than the sum of the parts here. So I think that really is a big part of it. Right now in high school, you're just in these big, massive high schools. There's no sense of community. There's no sense of engagement and excitement in a lot of high schools or colleges, frankly. And getting a place like Olin where you've got kids who are all committed to this, and then they can learn from each other, I think that is a big part of it.
Olin, a question I also had was, how do you kind of instill this culture of entrepreneurship? I mean, what is it that you're doing that automatically hits home to kids when they come in, that they're not just expected to walk out with a diploma, but really try to think for themselves?
We can build on each other, I guess. The first thing I'd say to that is we have a heavily design-based curriculum. So more than just a project-based curriculum where you might be given a problem as a team to work on, you work on that in a very hands-on way. Our curriculum very much encourages things like opportunity identification. So we sort of envision this as, or see this as three phases. We understand the human side of the problem we're trying to solve. Then we're given the technological skills to figure out solutions to solve that problem. And then we think about the implementational side. So the entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial thought and action that can help us take the technologies that we build and that we develop and really think about how those can come to market. And I think that entire spectrum, along with a lot of opportunities to gain exposure to entrepreneurship, is a great way that we pick up a lot of that skill and a lot of that experience.
We start with authentic, multidisciplinary problems that really don't have any boundaries, such as this is a calculus problem or this is a computer science problem. They're too complex for that. And we have a guided building of the complexity and ambiguity of those problems throughout 4 years. Shara Kearns.
Hi, thank you. And what about the young woman in the center? I mean, how do you, for example, work with local businesses in the community? It was kind of one of the introductions that we gave you, but give us an example of that.
Lynn, you're on. Lynn. Go.
So we have a number of projects, and they range from service opportunities. We have some of our students are in the local high schools or local middle schools or local elementary schools. There's a wonderful corporation in town that employs largely senior citizens that one of my colleagues is working with. We have students who are working on projects that involve people from other schools in the area, other colleges and universities, but also involve colleges and universities around the world. In fact, some of our students were in Ghana last summer working in a multidisciplinary project there. So we work really hard to try, even though we're small, to have lots and lots of partnerships that bring lots and lots of students from around the world and around the local community in to engage in this kind of activity. One of the things I like best is that when I'm walking down the hall and I see a group of students excitedly talking, I have no idea whether they're working on a problem set for my class or whether they're working on the next thing that is going to change AIDS treatment in South Africa, or whether they're working on launching the hot new IT mobile product.
Okay, so in the audience here, consider this a free Skype and a better conversation tool. But do you have any questions for our folks in Olin? Bueller?
I'll just make one comment.
Yes, go ahead.
And to me, Harry, the key thing about Olin, which is why I think it's such a really great model, is we talk a lot about innovation in education. We almost talk about nothing on innovation in pedagogy. And Olin is about innovation in how they teach, how they structure that. There are no departments. As you heard, you learn about complex problems. That's the way we should be teaching things. The other key thing that I think one of the gentlemen said there is that they learn problems with design and projects all early on. And if we could eliminate the whole STEM shortage in this country, if we just could eliminate STEM switch out in college. So the number of kids who go to college, they're ready to do STEM, they want to graduate in it, they switch out. And when do they switch out? They switch out after their freshman year. And the key indicator of why they switch out is that they don't have real world experience. They don't have real research. They're stuck in these big, boring lecture classrooms. It's all sort of foreign and obtuse. Mm-hmm. At Olin, they're actually working on real problems. So if you want to get kids engaged in college and keep them engaged, we need pedagogical innovation. And that's, to me, what Olin is really exemplifies.
A question for the Olin students that kind of comes naturally from this. When you walked into the school versus when you're walking out or when you've seen the peers walking out, have they stayed fairly true to what they've been interested in?
I found a lot of students have stayed true to what they're interested in the fact that everyone still is quote unquote an engineer. However, most people's interests develop over time through various projects and through their various interests, and that's something that's really interesting about Olin is that from freshman year we don't have a standardized curriculum in that everyone takes calculus and physics and chemistry. We actually just, our first semester freshman year, we take classes like Design Nature, where they give us a project where we basically build a toy for a class of fourth graders, thinking about both their needs and all of the physics, math, science, and engineering that goes into building such a device. Allowing the students at Olin to explore all of their subjects of interest via a project like that is really something that allows them to self-direct their education and figure out what aspects of engineering they actually enjoy. And by allowing people to explore more of the entrepreneurial side or more of the societal and human needs side of engineering, more people stay true to being engineers and really follow through with being passionate about engineering as a whole.
Okay, we've got a
Absolutely,
question.
and I'd just like to add, I think,
Go ahead.
it really helps you, the idea of self-direction really helps you mold your educational experience to your passions and to your interests, and I think that's what keeps students engaged and what keeps us excited about engineering throughout the 4 years.
Okay, we've got a question back here. Yes, sir.
My name is Fred Belmont. I'm a 7th grade math teacher in Northbrook, Illinois. This is a question. Before I became a math teacher, I was a serial entrepreneur, several different companies. Serial entrepreneur. I guess that's it. What sorts of successes have the Olin students, once they've gotten out, experienced, whether it's in technology products or toys or non-technology, whatever they make or build, or services?
So every student at Olin starts and runs a business. That is our Fundamentals of Business and Entrepreneurship course, and it lays the framework for people like Marco, who, as far as we can know so far, has started at least 5 ventures already. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'll start off by saying it depends how you count exactly how many it actually has been, but there are a number of students who graduate, and I think it's around 10% at least, who explore their own ventures or their own projects directly out of Olin. I know that that's certainly an option for me, possibly, given all the things that I've done at Olin. At one point between my sophomore and junior years, I took a year off with 5 other Olin students to start an education company because we were excited about it and we wanted a whole, as Ollie mentioned earlier, people all the way to product. How do you get from point A to point B experience? And it turns out that entrepreneurship and companies are a really great means of getting that whole cycle, and engineering is a part of that. But I think that opportunity is certainly something a lot of students do take advantage of.
All right, thanks to the folks from Olin for joining us. And if for the studio audience here, the president of Olin College is here as well, in case you want to bug him with questions after the fact.
So we need more math, we need more science. I've never met a good application writer who didn't know calculus, but at the same time, don't forget reading, music, art, literature. Those are such important sources of that.
And let's remember, math and science are also creative.
Oh, absolutely,
Let's not
in
knock
their
them
different way,
down.
absolutely. Yeah.
We're going to Olin, speaking of the cool people at Olin, and they're on both screens, so speak up.
Olin?
Hi, so based on Mr. Friedman's comment right now that the world is actually flatter than flat, I'm wondering a bit about the conversation we're having now is very much related around competitiveness. And I'm wondering about sort of the concept of compatibility and whether U.S. students can be prepared to be more compatible in this very flat world. I think in the context of Olin, the holistic engineering experience that we were telling you about before does prepare us well, and related on the comment that Mr. Friedman, you just made about the liberal arts, that represents about a third of our educational experience, and I think that definitely is a huge part of what empowers us to operate in this globalized world.
Great.
Well, I
Thank you.
think that's terrific, and I would like to clone Olin, 1,000 times over, basically, because so what happens in this flat world is your first job out of college may be manager of India supply chain for a division of Walmart or Costco. In other words, we're in a world now where it's a 24-hour cycle. It's a 24-hour innovation cycle. It's a 24-hour manufacturing cycle. Something that starts in California and then gets handed over to Shanghai and then gets handed over to New Delhi and then gets handed over to Berlin and then gets handed back to America. That's really where, because there's really just two rules of the flat world. Rule number one is whatever can be done will be done. Mm-hmm. The only question is, will it be done by you or to you? Yeah. Okay, but just don't think it won't be done. So if it can be done, that I can actually manufacture a product by harnessing a global supply chain, the best brains in the world, then people and companies will do that. And of course, they already are. And I think the second important rule of the flat world is that the most important competition in the flat world is no longer between countries and countries. It's no longer between companies and companies, although that's still important. The most important competition is between you and your own imagination. Mm-hmm. Because what you imagine now, you as an individual can now act on farther, faster, deeper, cheaper than ever before. And therefore, education, starting from primary education, that encourages and nurtures inspiration, innovation, digging inside yourself, because you can now act on that like never before as an individual.